Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. So today I'm delighted to be joined by Alice Stevens. Alice has been on the podcast before, and something that she wrote in an email after we spoke really caught my attention. So and Alice has kindly agreed to come on and while we explore perhaps different perspectives on stuff. So thank you for making time for us today, Alice. I really appreciate that.
Thank you for having me on again, Simon. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're a star. So I'm going to read the sentence, and I'll do a bit of that. Maybe just take it back a bit. So Alice is a co-founder of Adoptee Voices, and there'll be a link to the conversation that I had with Alice about Adoptee Voices, and Marcy as well in the show notes. So this is what Alice put in her email. It says, "We say in Adoptee Voices to write from the scar and not the wound. There are many fine adoptee writers who do that. If you want an uplifting story of becoming whole, I'm afraid you must read something that's not written by an adoptee." So the bit that really intrigued me was this: if you want an uplifting story of becoming whole, I am afraid you must read something that's not written by an adoptee. So what's behind that? What's your perspective behind that sentence, Alice?
Okay, well, first I'd just like to say that Marcy and I were talking about the Adoptee Literary Festival, and talking about Adoptee Voices is actually a different organization that Marcy is not involved in. It was founded by Sarah Easterly, and I am a co-facilitator with one of her workshops. Sarah Easterly, Ridge House, and I are co-facilitators. So we run this writing workshop for adoptees only. Have been doing it for over a year. We are, I think, in our 8th session now. And somebody who has read a lot of published books by adoptees, both published through traditional publishing houses and self-published books. And then also essays and more exploratory writings by adoptees in workshop environments. I have read quite a few of these writings, and though they might end with resilience and courage and with the adoptee getting into a space that's good for them, it's always a really difficult and hard journey. And there are a lot of really tough things to look at. And there's a lot of pain in reading it, a lot of hurt and trauma. So I guess it really depends what you mean by uplifting. A lot of stories do end. Well, first of all, we know as adoptees that there's really no real ending to our stories until we end, until we die. I mean, we are on a lifelong journey, discovering ourselves, discovering our identities, discovering what adoption has done to us, how it has affected our lives. And I know many adoptees who say that adoption doesn't affect them, and who don't feel that pain, or that they don't feel like adoption has given them any trauma in their life, and that's fine. Those adoptees don't generally write, though, and so you don't get their stories because maybe what is the story there? Though it would be interesting to see if somebody did attempt to write a story like that, and how it would read. But in terms of when adoptees who are generally called to write about their experience, for the reason that they're doing it is to process what they've been through and to share what they've been through. And so generally that means sharing how they got through a difficult time. So I think that that as somebody who's tried to publish about adoption, I've had a lot of pushback about the type of story that I'm trying to present. But I don't see any stories that would validate what the editors want that are written by adoptees. So the stories, the novels that the editors claim that they like are generally written by people who aren't adopted, and sometimes by adoptive parents. And so those are the uplifting books that people want to read, but they're not written by adoptees.
Okay. I think I'm starting to understand, yeah.
So I'm not saying that there aren't uplifting stories and that adoptees cannot be whole. I'm just saying that when we're talking about reading books or reading articles about adoptees, I have not read one that that conveys that the adoptee experience was all light, sunshine, and happiness.
Indeed, indeed. So I think that's where my misunderstanding lay, I think, is what you've just said, that you believe adoptees can be whole.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I think, yes, of course, adoptees can be people who live in society happily, successfully, all of that. But I also think that wholeness is different for an adoptee than it is for a non-adoptee. To become whole, we have to recognize that we are actually fractured, and we have to embrace that fracture. Instead of being, told that, oh, you were just part of this family, this is your life, and that's it. That then refuses to look at the parts that are missing from the adoptee. And for me, in my case, that also included the racial isolation that I lived in, and not being recognized as something that was a difficulty. Instead, it was embraced as something that proved that the world was a wonderful place. And sometimes the world was a wonderful place for me, but sometimes it wasn't. And a lot of times, that the othering that I experienced, even within my own family, was very hurtful to me, and really destroyed my sense of identity and my self-confidence. So, when an adoptee, considering adoptee, when I think about an adoptee as a whole, I kind of look at, envision a mosaic with all the broken bits that are then put together into a picture. But what is holding together that picture there are all sorts of seams in between that are holding together that picture. So as adoptees, we have to be kind of our own mortar that holds together all of those fragments for that one unified picture of our identity.
Yeah. I was thinking about somebody mentioned something called trauma bonding to me this morning, which is coming together and bonding through one another's trauma, right? And it struck me that and the person that was saying said he felt that sometimes there's an initial togetherness that comes from that. There's a validation. We're validating one another's trauma, which feels great, especially if we have been invalidated, right? So what you're saying is that the editors don't want they don't want a story without a happy ending, and they
yes, very much so. I believe, and a happy ending is some, you can interpret that in different ways, but generally they want a story that shows the adoptee overcoming the obstacles put in their path and to become, to realize their destiny. A lot of times that means that they get reunited with their birth parents.
Okay.
And as we know, it's our story doesn't end with reunion either. Reunions can be very difficult. So there are just a lot of nuances that I feel like non-adopted people don't understand. And they have been fed the same stories about adoption for so long that it's kind of ingrained in their mind that this is the way the adoption story should go. And when it doesn't go that way, then they feel cheated or as if something must be wrong from the messenger. Even if that person is an adoptee, that person is an outlier, is not, they're telling a story that they haven't heard before, and so they can easily dismiss it. Oh, well, she had a bad experience. Oh, well, she's angry. So in my case, I had a really great adoption story, and my story is uplifting because I had to be adopted. My mother was a military prostitute. My father was an American soldier who abandoned us. And in Korea at the time, and still is, there was no place in society for mixed race children. I mean, literally, I would not have been able to go to school. I would not have been able to have any of the societal protections that other Koreans had. I would have been, I wouldn't have been able to have a good job, all of those things. I got adopted into America, into a wonderful, wonderful family who loved me, who I loved, who supported me. But it was a long and painful journey because it was such a good story. I did not feel able for a long time to admit that there were things that were broken in me, and that I couldn't. I blamed it all on myself. That this was something that was deficient in me. And it took me a long time to realize that it wasn't my fault entirely. There were a lot of things that were conspiring against me, and my sense of myself was broken, my sense of who I was. Even though I could function in society, I was successful. I have a loving family myself. I have a career. For a long time, in my adult life, I there was something really missing and I didn't know what it was. And it wasn't until I actually wrote my adoption novel and started looking at how adoption affected me that I understood that I had to look at the effects of adoption in me. And then in doing that, I understood that the narrative of adoption was part of what was damaging me. And it wasn't just damaging me, it was damaging people who adopt. You know, people would adopt with unrealistic expectations because they had been fed this adoption fantasy. So people were unprepared when they adopted children from a different race, or else they just, they just they saw a story and they thought, okay, I can do that too. So they're just the dominant narrative of adoption is very hurtful to all sorts of people in society. The adoptees, the first mothers, and their families, and even the adoptive parents, the ones who don't look beyond what they're told the adoption story is going to be, and they don't actually research it, and they adopt the children and then find out, it's actually really difficult to raise an adopted child.
Yeah. Wow. I the trauma bonding thing that I was talking about, I haven't really, I don't think I've really experienced that. Maybe I have. Maybe my mind's playing tricks on me. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I probably have. Yeah. I'm oddly vague this afternoon.
But I mean, Simon, why do you do this? What is your podcast?
Okay, so why do I do this?
Yeah.
Well, because to help others heal. So my own, although I'm a white guy adopted by white parents, and so have absolutely no lived experience of the transracial complexity, other than I know it can be huge, right? And I know that is huge. I've interviewed lots of transracial. I have no lived experience of that. But so that's where our stories differ. But the stories, there's probably more similarity in our stories than there is difference. I would say so. Is that in that it showed itself late. It showed itself later from, or it became, my stuff became. I became aware of my stuff later on. So there's that quote by, was that, I think it's Jung or Freud or someone, says, until we make the subconscious conscious, it will rule our life, and we will call it fate. Right. So the nature of the subconscious is it's subconscious. We are not aware of it. And so my stuff came out like it came out like a volcano, like an eruption out of a volcano. Very short-lived, and two distinct 20-second periods of my life that were really debilitating in the moment. And they were marked by anger towards my birth mother, who I'd never given any thought to at all. And a feeling of unlovability, being unloved. So I then it's that and some I'd been chasing career goals, chasing business goals, and finally got to some short-lived success in business, and it didn't make me happy. So there were two things going on within my life within about 18 months. One was the fact that maybe adoption has messed me up, and business success hasn't made me happy. So I then my antennae were then up for what's going to make me happy, and that sent me off on this line. And I learned some stuff, and I learned some, deep, profound stuff about identity for myself, and was kind of, it became, this thought popped into my head completely out of the blue. I'd never considered myself a helpful person, right? Or, I wasn't community minded. I never wanted to be a teacher or a nurse or a doctor. Do you know what I mean? Other people's well-being wasn't in my in my heart. It wasn't, and then it came into my heart. And I was just having a conversation with a coach, mentor, therapist kind of woman one day, and I just said, I want your job. I want to help other people. That was 11 years ago, and that's led me eventually into the adoption space, which I've been in for a couple of years. But what along the specific narrative that got me was the primal wound. So I hadn't felt wounded by adoption. And then, until I read that book, I thought maybe it's played for me, but that book took me down. That book took me down, and until it didn't, and so it kind of deepened my journey into who we truly are, and I believe that we are all unwoundable. I have definitely felt wounded, but we're not our feelings. So I came up with a metaphor for this, and it's on the basis of the fact that I'm not a very good driver. Okay, so I've written off 3 cars. Do you use that word in the US? Written off, when the insurance?
I would say total.
Sorry, total. Yeah,
total.
Yeah. I've totaled 3 cars in 40 years or whatever, So okay. I was joking this morning. I was sharing the story in the metaphor with somebody else. So, but I've never been damaged in those crashes, right? Because there's a safety cage. Like the bodies, cars have crumple zones, and a safety cage to protect the occupants, right? So for me, it's the damage has been the damage has been the damage has been taken up by the crumple zone, and I've been okay.
Okay.
And I've been okay. So the car looks totaled, but I in the safety zone, I in the safety cell, I'm fine because I am unwoundable. And the other metaphor that I use quite a lot for this is the diamond in the fist metaphor. So I don't know if you've seen me doing this or heard me doing this. So I hold a diamond up to the screen. So I hold a clenched fist up to the screen, right? The clenched fist is the metaphor for the trauma, because for me the trauma manifested as anger, right? So, and angry people hit people, and I have been angry. I have you know, been in fights, you know, when I was a kid and stuff like that. So, but the natural shape of the hand is open. So if the clenched fingers open up to the natural state, it reveals this diamond. This is the diamond is a metaphor for our true identity. So it's the spiritual essence of who we are. And I use this phrase a lot as well, you know, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So the spirit, the diamond is the spiritual being. The trauma, the fist, is part of the human experience. And the human experience and our trauma and our feelings and our thoughts are so overwhelming and so loud, the voice in my head is so loud, that it gets all my attention, and I lose touch with my true being, the diamond, the spirit, life force, or chi, or, you know, some people call it consciousness. So extending the diamond metaphor, right? The diamond is amongst the toughest substances known to mankind. That diamond, and so it can't be wounded. Yeah. So it can't be cut, right? You can't cut a diamond, and you know, it's the you know, you're a writer, so you know that the metaphors reach their limit. So if there's no cut to the diamond, there's no wound. And if there's no wound, then the diamond is kind of forever whole, in the same way as the essence of the person in the car that's totaled is unhurt. And obviously, some accidents, again, the metaphor doesn't work completely, because some people do die in car accidents. But I have not in my totals, that hasn't kind of happened. So yeah, every metaphor has a limit. But I truly believe that we are whole apart from feeling that we're not.
Meaning that we, no matter what, we're whole because we're born whole, or?
Well, this is when you kind of, we go from the physical to the spiritual. So my father-in-law died, I think it was about 8 years ago, and we went to see him, and he was lying in there. He's lying on the bed in the old people's home where he'd been for a couple of years. My wife and her brother, so you know, it's a horrible time. Now his body was there. It's the only time I've seen a dead body. His body was there, but he wasn't. You know, the life force, the life force that animated his body wasn't there. And I'm saying, you know, on one level we're our bodies, but on another level we're the life force that animates the body, or, you know, some people call it the meat suit. It's a little bit demeaning, isn't it? But you know, so that you know, what we're talking about here is in the upstream of the physical, upstream of our physicality, and it's tricky. You can only kind of, because our brains are conditioned, are wired to talk about things, and spirit isn't a thing. It's more like a wind, or you know, it's a spacious place. Yeah, and it's so that's how I see it. And so I believe that we're in agreement that the narrative is wrong. The fairy tale, what do people call it? They call it rainbows and unicorns. That I totally agree with you that that's incorrect. And I also think looked at it from a different lens, the primal wound narrative is incorrect as well. And why I do this podcast is because, I think the main reason I do that podcast is because believing, I'm a gullible guy, or easily influenced, or whatever you want to call it, or very open. You could say I'm very open. It depends. Is it a positive thing? Is it a negative thing? So believing the primal wound took me down. And I see that as the dominant narrative in certain circumstances. And for me, it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. So it became a self-limiting belief. So the more I believed the trauma, the more the darker life got, the worse it got. And then so the metaphor I sometimes use for this is the fact that, like it's like holding a beach ball underwater. I went down, and then when I realized that it's not true, I bounced back higher. Bounced back higher than I was. So yeah, I'd say the reason that I do the podcast is because I fell for the primal wound narrative, and it took me down, and I don't want other people to be taken down. If I can do it, if it's in my power, then I'll kind of do that. It's a really long answer, but
yeah, no, that's a good answer. I've never read The Primal Wound. I don't intend to read it. I know it's helped a lot of people. She's not an adoptee, and I don't, that book does not appeal to me. A better book I think is by Betty Jean Lifton, and it's called The Adopted Self. She is an adoptee, and she is not, she's talking more about the archetypal aspects of being an adoptee. So things that you can recognize in other stories, and in other adoptee stories that will resonate with you. So, I totally get what you're saying about the primal wound. I think that for a lot of people, it has been helpful in that it lets them recognize that, yes, adoption was not all happiness and sunshine as they have been told, or so I think it gives adoptees permission to look at themselves and say, yes, something inside me has been broken. So I get also what you're saying is that then you took that sort of as like something to hold on to and maybe make an excuse for lots of other things.
Yeah, I think I held on to it, that's for sure. Whether I used it for an excuse for other stuff, I'm not sure whether I'm the right person to answer that question. And I think it helped me enormously, because I wouldn't have had the breakthroughs that I've had. I've been looking at this area of consciousness for like 14 years, 13, 14 years. And to me, a mentor of mine is not in the adoption space at all, a guy called Michael Neal. Although he, funnily enough, he follows the teachings of an adoptee guy called called Sydney Banks, who never really talked about being adopted, actually. So that's an interesting one. He's not. He was a Scottish welder that had an enlightenment experience, and anyway, that's by the by. Michael Neal says that his view of becoming more conscious is actually, most people talk about climbing a ladder of consciousness. So there's the seminal work of a guy called David Hawkins is called the Power versus Force, and he's got a scale of consciousness from 0 to 1,000. So most people think it's like climbing a ladder, becoming more enlightened. Like Michael Neal says, it's more like falling down. It's more like falling down stairs, or sets of stairs. So you've got a tower block with 16 floors, and you've got 32 flights of stairs and half stairs, and you kind of like you fall down, and that's why it hurts, because you bang your head until you have the realization, and that's what that resonates more for me, that version of becoming more conscious. And the primal wound definitely helped me in that. But this isn't for me just about it isn't just about the primal wound. It's this. Well, I talked about trauma bonding. As I was swimming this lunchtime, I came up and I thought about trauma bonding. So the guy I was talking to about it, Vin, an Australian adoptee, he was talking about trauma bonding as two people coming together through their sharing their shared experience of trauma. I thought, as I was swimming, I thought about trauma bonding as in like the trauma was stuck to me, right? The trauma became me. It threatened to engulf me, right? It was me, and what has helped me has been trauma unbonding, right? So it's separating me, the essence of who I am, through the trauma that I've been through in terms of the trauma. People look at trauma as in what we've been through, and we also look at trauma in terms of how we feel now, right? And we also look at trauma in terms of, the body keeps the score, right? The body keeps the score, as that's all Van talks about. Yes, yeah, maybe it does keep score. However, if we go upstream, of the body to the spirit, then it's less relevant, shall we say, that the body keeps the score. And also, like the body renews itself. I don't know what the cycle is, but year after year, our body's in a constant. Our cells are constantly being renewed. So the body may keep the score, but over time, the scoreboard is wiped clean, because we're a whole new being in terms of the cells that make up who we are. So this isn't just for me about the primal wound. It's about trauma unbonding. It's about separating what we've been through, the past, right, so it's unbonding from the past. It's unbonding from the story in our head that tells us, the voice in our head that tells us that we're not good enough, right? And it's unbonding from the feelings of insecurity, because when I say whole, I am whole and I still feel insecure sometimes. So something happened at the weekend, nothing to do with adoption, nothing to do with anything bizarrely related to it. We've got some holiday cottages, and the tenants and the neighbours have fallen out over car parking, and the neighbours are coming to us to stop adults parking, our tenants parking in a certain way. And there was I had a big feeling of anxiety about the conflict that I was potentially walking into here, right? And insecurity, and it really got me. I really don't like conflict. So is that something to do with adoption? Maybe, who knows? But I don't, by whole, I don't mean never feeling down. I don't mean never feeling insecure. I don't mean never feeling loved. I don't mean never worrying about people leaving me or anything. I'm whole with shitty feelings, occasional shitty feelings, or often shitty feelings. That whole does not mean wall-to-wall happiness, massive grin on my face every waking moment.
Yeah. So what does whole mean? That's the question.
So whole means, well, the closest we can get to it is that it's not a thing. It's spirit. So the mind can't grasp it. And that's why I use metaphors. So metaphors, and I use a metaphor to explain the metaphor. So you've seen the film The Invisible Man.
Yeah, a long time ago.
A long time ago. So the Invisible Man is invisible.
Right.
He only becomes clear. He only becomes visible. Sorry, when he puts his suit on, but he's got no head, because he hasn't got he hasn't got a suit on his head, and he's got no hands because he hasn't got gloves on his hands. So he puts gloves on his hands, and he puts a bandage around his face and becomes visible. So what's whole? Well, spirit, but we can't see spirit because it's not a thing, and therefore we need a metaphor to make the invisible visible, such as, come back to my diamond analogy, the diamond metaphor, which isn't, it was adapted. I actually adapted it from Michael Neal. He talks about the diamond hidden in horse poop, right, in manure, right? So I've just adapted it to be a trauma metaphor, and that's what I'm talking about with the cell, the safe cell of the car. So the crumple zone is our feelings, but inside our feelings is our whole self, which is undamageable, unwoundable, uncuttable, uneffable. Yeah. So what's whole? Spirit. Spirit is whole, but it's not a thing. So the mind can't get its head around it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen this for myself, but there's no such thing as a second-hand epiphany. There's no such thing as a second-hand insight. We have to see things from ourselves. I can't give you, if I could give everybody that insight, I would. And that's what I'm trying to point at.
So,
point people towards.
You're saying that everybody is whole. Everybody, we all have the wholeness within us.
Yeah. So the full line is we are from the French philosopher. We are one spiritual being having whatever 7 billion human experiences. So the we is the singularity and the life force, one consciousness. And some of the neuroscientists and people studying these areas are I'm reading a book by a guy called Donald Solomon. No, what's it called? I'm listening to it at the moment. I just downloaded it this morning. Oh yeah, Donald Hoffman. He's saying there is one consciousness. So yeah, we're all whole because there's only one others. It's really head bending stuff. Clearly, it's bending my head. That it's my on a good day this is a passion. On a bad day it's a bit of an obsession. But it depends which way I'm going at. But this is what I stick at. This is my curiosity. This is my thing. This is my fascination. Identity, consciousness. That's the stuff.
Okay. That's good to know. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds a bit nuts, I know.
No, it doesn't sound nuts. Everybody has their philosophies. I just wonder. I think that for a lot of adoptees, the first step is being given that permission to understand that there is something wrong with you. That it's okay. Because we are told so much that we should be grateful. There shouldn't be anything wrong with us. So many of us don't have that confidence to at first embrace that actually there is adoption means something that does something to you that is generally does something. It can be very positive, but no matter how positive it is, there is also a negative. And we are not allowed, at least in this culture, in the American culture, we are not encouraged to look at the negative. So I think for a lot of people who do, read The Primal Wound or whatever and get that first taste of that realization, it can be very heady, and it can be, as maybe in your case, that you grasp onto it so hard that you kind of get diverted in the other direction for a while, because after denial for so long, being given permission to explore something that was denied to you before, of course, it's human nature to go all in on that and embrace it. And perhaps that's also where trauma bonding comes in, where then you find other people who've been through the same thing, and for the first time in your life, you can talk with other people and have them understand you. And that creates a community. And so there is some sort of regulation that needs to be done within you to balance out those feelings, to let in the empowerment that comes with being angry and with rejecting what you've been told. But also you've got to use that empowerment not just for your anger, but to grow and to, as you're doing, to help other people grow, help other people understand, and just sort of, come to some sort of understanding about how it fits into your life in a holistic way.
Well, it's been
So, I
fascinating.
mean,
It's
sorry,
really
go on.
fascinating. Sorry, I
Yeah.
cut you off, Alice.
No, I mean, I also wonder, is anybody whole, adoptee or not? It's
Well, that it the idea, right, is the presumption that we need to heal. Sorry, the idea that we need to heal is based on the presumption that we're not whole already, and I believe that we're all whole. We just believe we're not, and I don't always feel whole, but I know in my heart of hearts that I am whole, and I believe that I am whole, and so is everybody else. It's that crumple zone stuff. But that's just my opinion.
yeah, well, I think it's a great opinion. I don't know if I 100% agree with it. I mean, I think there are, yes, I mean, we're all supposedly born with the same, the same stuff inside us, whatever you want to call it, spirit, soul, life force.
It goes the other way around, actually. This is what this Donald, I forgot his really name again, sorry. Donald Hoffman saying, the prevailing paradox is that bodies have consciousness, and the emerging paradigm is that consciousness has body.
Okay.
It's, as I say, it's pretty far out, and it's pretty far out, and it is, yeah, it's changing. It's changing slowly. But how long did it take them did it take them 200 years before thinking that the world was round, to suspecting it was round, to that becoming the belief? Didn't people, we thought that the sun went round the earth, and it takes a long time for prevailing worldviews to change. It's very incremental, but yeah, it is far out. Is this idea that consciousness is everything, and consciousness only model, and yeah, that's the exploration.
Okay. Well, as you say, it takes a long time to change people's minds, and that's what I'm trying to do with adoption. And I think you're trying to do that too. We're working hard in the salt mines to change that story.
Yeah. So we may be in salt mines, or perhaps diamond mines, right?
The diamond mines, of course.
Thanks, Alice. It's been fascinating. I really enjoyed it. I think it's very healthy that people can come together with different perspectives. There's not a lot of that in society at the moment, especially on social media. It's very confrontation and very whatever the word is, very aggressive, and there's not much space. So I've really enjoyed it, and it's broadened my perspective on other people's perspectives, which is what I love doing.
Well, thank you, Simon. Thanks for everything that you're doing. And just, having a nice open dialogue. Of course, I know, that we are on the same side, so it's easy to have this dialogue. But I appreciate that we have, that we are the embodiment of how adoptees have different ideas. And we don't all think alike. But we can work together, and and we do, and be friends. And so I'm glad to have met you, Simon.
Brilliant. You're a star. Thanks a lot, Alice. And thank you, listeners. We will speak to you again very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.